Hi, Clint Coons here with Anderson Business Advisors, and I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes and go through some basic structures for you as a real estate investor, because there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to asset protection and tax planning for real estate investors. And the problem, as I see it, is that most of the people that dispense this information are not real estate investors themselves. So they don't understand the problems that we all face when it comes to investing and putting together the appropriate structures. You know, I often think of it or refer to it as accurate versus relevant information. And I think what most typifies this is a recent client who came into my office that is a flipper and had been to a local attorney, and the attorney said, create a limited liability company for this flipping activity. And then he told him to go see a CPA. And the CPA said, well, what is it you're doing? He told him, I'm flipping real estate here in Washington State. And the CPA told him, well, have it taxed as an S corporation so you can minimize employment taxes on your earnings. Now, both of those professionals gave this individual investor accurate information. The attorney's right. If you set up a limited liability company for your real estate investing, it will provide asset protection for you. And the CPA is correct. If you have it taxed as an S corporation, you will save on employment taxes. So when you take money out, some of it comes out as salary and some of it comes out as a distribution. But both are wrong. And the reason why they're both wrong is because they do not understand the investor's needs. And this is what I talk about relevant information. Because when he sat down with me, I told him, create a C corporation. And he was shocked. He said, why would I create a C corporation? Both of those individuals, those professionals with whom I met with, they told me I should never do a C corporation. Well, I explained to him, and the problem is that those professionals don't understand your business. One of the primary needs you have as a real estate investor is having access to capital. And with the particular type of investing that you're engaging in, having a flow-through entity that shows up on your personal tax return is going to make that difficult for you. In fact, as I pointed out to him when I showed him his individual 1040, I said to him, this is why you haven't been able to receive traditional financing and you're stuck using hard money and paying more than you have to for the money you borrow. He was surprised that I could discern this information from his tax return and from some supplemental information he submitted to me with regards to his assets. I said, it's clear to me because I'm a real estate investor. I deal with these issues. And so the two professionals, they gave you accurate information, but they didn't understand your business. So when it comes to real estate investing, you want to make sure that you're working with someone who understands your business and understands the challenges you face when it comes to real estate investing. And I know this firsthand because when I grew up, I could refer to myself as a young real estate investor. And the reason I say that is my father was a real estate investor and I was just the indentured servant. So I started working right away. As soon as I could walk, I was out there helping him on his properties. Now, everything my father did, he did in his own name. And what makes this particularly disconcerting is that his father was an attorney. And he never once sat down with his son, my dad, and said, you should create some structures to protect yourself. It's because my grandfather, his father, didn't understand asset protection, especially how it relates to real estate. And then his CPA never once gave my father good advice as when it comes to reducing taxes. And as a result, my father overpaid. In fact, both of these issues were not rectified until I graduated law school. And then I went from becoming an indentured servant to work on his real estate to become permanent retainer for life. So as you see, or as I've explained, getting good information can sometimes be difficult. And so what I want to do with the next 15 minutes or so is I want to explain to you the different strategies you should be considering as a real estate investor to ensure that your assets are protected and that if it comes to reducing your taxes, you have opportunities. So you never want to lock yourself or box yourself into a corner, and it's real simple. So let's start with this. Let's assume that you're a flipper. You want to go out and buy and sell real estate. The question often comes up, where should you set up your entity? What type of entity you should have? The example I gave you, an individual wanted to use an LLC tax as an S corp. Accurate, but not relevant, especially if you want to borrow. Here's what I would do. If you were going to be a flipper, I would suggest that you create a corporation or an LLC taxed as a corporation. Either way, I would make this let's just call it a C Corp, because if it's an LLC taxed as a C Corporation, it's going to be the same thing. So I would create this as my base entity. This would be the entity that is going to handle all of my deals. But I'm not going to flip in this corporation. Don't flip in the corporation because that corporation is going to serve as your base of operation. Think of it this way. You're going to be building up name recognition. If you're going out there and advertising for potential deals, You don't want to risk that corporation if a deal goes south on you. So you want to insulate this entity from potential liability. So what I do with many of my clients is I have their base corporation there, and then I have them create separate LLCs like this for each of their deals and run multiple deals through these various limited liability companies. That way, if something goes wrong right here with this LLC and that particular flip, then the most you stand to lose is just that one company. Everything else that you may have going on, let's say you had a flip going on over here, that's going to be protected from the liabilities associated with this limited liability company right here. Now, I myself have flipped properties. And this is exactly the way I did it. In fact, when I was flipping properties in the Las Vegas market, what I would do is I would create I had my corporation set up, and then I went out there and I created multiple limited liability companies all owned by the corporation. So they were set up ready to go with a bank account. So when I found that deal, I could put in the offer in the name of the limited liability company. So if you're a flipper, you may want to do this, set up some LLCs, and these LLCs would be located in the state in which you plan on doing your flips. This corporation doesn't necessarily have to be there. It could, but if you're looking for anonymity, maybe you choose a state like Wyoming or Nevada for this corporation, but definitely these states would be, or these LLCs would be in the state where the flip is taking place. Now, the advantage for a flipper is that by having this type of corporation set up a C corporation, you're not going to be treated as a dealer because it's not done in your own name or through a flow-through entity. The other advantage is that nothing shows up on your tax return. So you're free to pay yourselves out big fat salaries. Those big fat salaries look really good to lenders if you want to go in and borrow money because they see you as a W-2 wage earner and not a small business owner. Small business owners carry a lot of risk to lenders because your business can go up and down. And they're concerned that if they loan you money and your business is in a downturn, they're going to be left holding the bag. So keep that information private. Don't show it to the lenders. Use a C corporation. All that stuff stays off your 1040. So for the basic flipper, what we're looking at is a corporation and then LLCs for your individual deals. And the other thing about this is that when you're done doing, a couple of these deals through these LLCs, you dissolve them. Get rid of them. Best part about dissolving them, if somebody comes back against you later on, they would think that that company is out of business because you dissolved the LLC from which they purchased their home. So this is a great strategy from preventing future claims from coming back against you. And there's a lot of claims out there when it comes to fraudulent misrepresentation, the sale. Now, whether or not they are accurate, it doesn't matter. If you know anything about our legal system, you don't have to do anything wrong in this day and age to be sued. In fact, I recently read about a famous individual who's being sued by his son he didn't even know he had for $170 million. That is just crazy. That typifies the problem with the American justice system. All right, so that is for flippers. Now, how about if you want to buy and hold? So you're going to get into the buy and hold strategy then. So how does that change? Well, first off, you're going to buy and hold. You do not want to use corporations to buy and hold because there can be adverse tax consequences in about 90% of the situations. In a few situations, we may recommend that based upon your income level. Again, it's looking at you, making sure that your structure is relevant and is firing on all cylinders. So you get both the tax and the asset protection when you're creating these plans. So let's just start with the basic real estate investor who wants to buy and hold. With the basic real estate investor that wants to buy and hold, the typical entity we're going to use is a limited liability company for those properties. Now, a question often comes up, how many LLCs should I set up? Well, if you're doing it the right way, LLCs can be very inexpensive. I would highly recommend you use one LLC per property. So each LLC has one house inside of it. And the reason you're doing this is to ensure that, again, if anything happens with either of these homes, you yourself are protected and the assets are protected. So you could lose something here, but you don't lose these things. In the workshops that I teach, I often remind people, I said, think of Las Vegas. What is the tagline to Las Vegas? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, if you look at your LLC, think of it in the same way. What happens in the LLC stays in the LLC. So if anything befalls this limited liability company, these two over here are protected. Now, some people will tell you that you would you should own all of these in your own name. Now, I highly disagree with that strategy because I feel that by owning those LLCs in your own name, you're putting yourself at risk because depending on your state, you may not have what we refer to as good charging order protections. And that means if you're sued individually, somebody could take your LLCs from you. Now, I'd hate to see that happen, especially if you're active with your tenants, that you get sued and you lose all your investments. So what I would recommend is that you create a limited liability company here in Wyoming that offers exceptional, or Nevada, that offers exceptional protections for you as an individual. So you own this LLC, and this LLC would own each of these individual limited liability companies. So when you look at the structure, what you see is that you only own one LLC. Now this LLC, of course, owns three. So if something were to happen and you were to be sued individually, your creditor is going to ask you, what do you own? You would tell them you just own this interest. And that would require that they get a judgment against you, because if you set this up right, if you start with this box here, we can create a structure for you wherein if anybody's looking around, your name is not associated with it, because you can use privacy in a state like Nevada or Wyoming or Delaware that hides your ownership interest. And privacy is a great shield when it comes to asset protection, because if they don't know you have it, they're not going to go after it. So start with the easy form of protection is with privacy by utilizing this Wyoming or Nevada structure as your base, and then create these other LLCs in the state where you own the property. So this might be Florida, this is Georgia, this is California. However you do it, these LLCs here all point back to this with the Secretary of State, and this does not point to you. So it adds complete privacy. Now, one other wrinkle here I want to throw in is that if you're setting up a structure like this and you have property that is encumbered by a mortgage, you do not want to put the property directly into the LLC like this, because you could trigger the due on sale clause with your lender. So what you should do is first utilize a land trust. So if this property here was encumbered by a mortgage, the way that deal would come together is I would have my LLC here, but first I would create this thing over here called a land trust, and this is my house, and I would deed my house into the land trust and then move the land trust into the LLC. The lender does not find out about the transfer of the land trust into the LLC because that's a private record. A land trust is a tremendous tool for real estate investors when it comes to masking their ownership of the property. Number one, it can provide privacy, but also transfers of the trust itself, because the transfers do not get recorded. That is, with a land trust, the only thing that is recorded is your transfer into the trust. Now that trust then can be moved to an LLC or to another party, and no one knows about that. So wherever goes the trust, so goes the property. So what you have then is a structure where you have an LLC owns a land trust, and the land trust is completely disregarded, doesn't have to file a tax return, doesn't have to do anything. Okay, that land trust just sits there holding title to the property. No one even knows this LLC exists, but it's a trump card for the lender, because the lender accepts transfers of real estate into grantor trust. And that's a key word here. A land trust is a grantor trust. That's how you're able to get around that due on sale clause. If your local professional is not up on the word land trust, which I recommend you never use around people, always refer to it as a grantor trust. Think of it as a living trust, and they'll know what you're talking about, and they'll be accepting of that type of tool. So land trusts are great for rental real estate. If you're going to own it long term, you definitely want to be familiar with that tool. How about if you're a hard money lender, or you want to get in some private money lending? Well, then you have a possibly a little different structure you should consider with private money lending. Now, in the private money lending scenario, the question often becomes, what do you want to do? Do you want to create active income, or do you want to create passive income? That is, if you want to create active income so you can pay yourself a salary and possibly fund a solo 401k or qualified retirement plan, then you should run your private lending through a corporation, or an LLC taxed as a corp. So I'd run my private lending through a corp if I want active income. If I want passive income, then I'm going to run it through a limited liability company for passive income. So then it's a flow-through entity to me. The difference here is that this, I would take a salary out to myself. When you have a salary, you can contribute to qualified retirement plans. Here, you wouldn't take a salary. It's just going to be a distribution to you. So it really depends on your overall strategy, what you're trying to accomplish. But what is imperative here in being a private lender. You want to make sure that these entities are created either in Wyoming or Nevada. Wyoming or Nevada for either one of these. And the reason being is that this private lending business is where you're putting a lot of your cash at risk. Your investments are being placed at risk, and you want to make sure that if something happens, something goes wrong, and you get sued, they can't take this cash from you because that is your source of capital. That's how you're making your money. So you want to make sure you put it beyond the reach of your creditors into an asset protection safe jurisdiction like Wyoming or Nevada. So for private lenders, it's pretty straightforward. Now we can take it and get a little more complicated. Some of the private lenders we work with, they're doing multiple deals that kind of look similar to joint ventures. And in that case, I would oftentimes create separate LLCs for each individual venture just to make sure that if anything goes wrong, you have protection. So it might look something similar to what you saw with the other structures, where if you're involved in private lending, you create an entity and then this entity creates separate little entities for each private lending deal like this. So this is an LLC, and then each private lending deal is held in a separate structure. So if one of those deals is considered to be a general partnership by a court and it went bad, then you yourself do not have any risk to that, or the only risk you do have is the capital that was invested into that. So for private lenders, that's a structure that we would typically recommend. One other aspect of real estate investing would like to talk about, which is really popular out there right now, is investing with self-directed IRAs. If you've watched any of my YouTube videos or if you read anything on my blog, you probably realize I'm not a fan, never have been. And the reason why is that I think there's a lot of misrepresentation with self-directed IRAs and people are making some serious mistakes. And as a result, what we're seeing now is the IRS is targeting people who use self-directed IRAs and finding ways to undo those transactions and make it completely taxable to them. Not only if you make a mistake with self-directed IRA, then you lose your asset protection as well. And we've seen situations where bankruptcy trustees have now come in and taken people's retirement accounts from them. So when it comes to investing with qualified retirement plans, what you should be looking at doing if you have a self-directed IRA or a traditional IRA and you want protection for it, set up a QRP. A QRP could be a solo 401k or a profit sharing plan. That's just a qualified retirement plan. And what you're able to do is you can take your IRAs like this, think about this, even your spouse. I mean, how great is this? You can pool accounts. You and your spouse can roll both of your accounts into this one QRP. So if you have some IRAs over there that you've been struggling with trying to work, you can dump them both into here, get all the money into there. And what's particularly interesting about this type of plan is you have a bank account, you have a checkbook. So unlike the IRAs where you have to go through an LLC and create some extravagant structure in order to gain control over your money, with a QRP, you have control right away because you open up a bank account under the name of your QRP and you're the only signer on that account. The other benefit of the QRP is you can borrow. Let's say I'm putting some deals together. I want to borrow money out. You can borrow up to $50,000 out of your plan and you have 5 years to repay yourself. That's a tremendous benefit of using a QRP. And here's something else. You can get a little more aggressive with these. And when I say aggressive, I don't mean that you're going to tread over the line into an area where you're definitely going to run into issues. I mean, with the two strategies I'm about to share with you, they've really helped real estate investors propel their investing to a whole new level because they have access to cash they didn't think that they could get access to. With a QRP, you can partner with your plan. Yes, so that means that if you wanted to buy a piece of real estate over here and you have cash on the outside, and you've rolled this IRA money into your plan, you can then go together with your QRP and you individually and buy the property and own it. And then, of course, profits would be split accordingly. If you did 60-40, then your profits would be split 60-40. So that's an option for you. Here's another thing you can do with a QRP you may not be aware of. Let's say that you have money, but you want to start flipping real estate. All your capital is inside of your IRA. Well, why don't you do this? If you set up a corporation, okay, so you set up a company over here, you set up your own C Corp, you become an employee of your C Corporation, it sponsors a qualified retirement plan, you can take the money that you rolled in from your IRAs and you can invest it into your C Corporation, use that capital now to go out and start flipping properties in those LLCs like I talked about, and then the money flows back into here. It's going to be taxable. But you have the money, then you can take a salary. You can actually make more contributions to your QRP based upon that salary. And then when you're ready to pay the money back, You can pay the capital back to the QRP, and you can also pay dividends back there. You know, the big thing about double taxation is the payment of dividends. Well, double taxation isn't a problem if you're paying dividends back to a QRP that doesn't pay any tax. So that could be a great thing. These are some of the strategies that you can use as a real estate investor. The key is you just got to work with somebody who gives you relevant information and understands what it is you're doing. At Anderson, we bring that all together. We have a team of both attorneys and CPAs and financial planners within our firm. We have over 60 employees devoted to helping real estate investors just like yourself minimize their taxes with creative strategies designed specifically with real estate investing in mind, and strategies designed to protect your assets to make sure that if anything happens, you don't lose it all in the event of a lawsuit. We've got lots of clients that have been involved in situations before, and the number one thing they've always told us is they were so glad they contacted Anderson. They had us put their structure together because that spelled the difference between giving away a little versus giving away a lot. My name is Clint Kuhns with Anderson Business Advisors, and I recommend that if you have any further questions about asset protection planning, give us a call for a strategy session, and you can talk to one of my employees, one of my representatives, and they will walk through your individualized situation and create a plan for you. It's worth your time. Give us a call, 800-706-4741, or you can reach us at andersonadvisors.com. Again, my name is Clint Kuhns with Anderson Advisors, and I look forward to speaking with you at some time in the future.